Hi, I'm Malka Katzenstein. I am a wellness coach, and today we will talk about how to manage the holidays with difficult family members. It's a busy time of holidays coming up, and it can be really nice, and it can also be stressful for many reasons. And one source of stress for many people is dealing with difficult family. And if that's a challenge that you have, also know that you can enjoy your holiday, and also know that you're dealing with difficult family members. It doesn't have to ruin your holiday. So here are a few things that can help. One of the most important things that you can do is to take care of yourself. Set yourself up for success by being in the best shape you can, physically, emotionally, mentally. And that means taking care of yourself, being on top of your self-care routines in the days before the holiday, and also planning to do them over the holiday. So that means you want to, do the best things that you can do for yourself. So you want to make sure that you eat well, that you're well nourished, you're not hangry, cranky, angry, hungry. You want to make sure that you're well rested, so make sure you get enough sleep. Doing some exercise is great. All of the basics for self-care. It can help you to feel centered if you journal. Maybe some breathing or meditation can be helpful. You want to be in good shape for it. Think of it as kind of like training for some kind of challenge, if you want to look at it like that. So if you put yourself in your best possible advantage that you can, and also think of that as, one of the things that I will bring up is having boundaries with your family members. And I saw something that I thought was really interesting, and it was about having boundaries with yourself. And you can look at your self-care routines as that, I know that it is a busy time and everybody's busy and maybe not sleeping enough, getting to bed late, getting up early to get things done, and also maybe not eating well. And set some boundaries for yourself. No, it's important for me to take care of myself and make those things happen for you. And that will put they'll put you in peak condition, let's say. You will be in a good mood, hopefully, and better able to handle the challenges. So another thing that you can do to set yourself up for success is to have a plan and be ready to implement that plan. So you can have some topics that you will decide.
6 p.m.
You can have some topics that are off limits. There's, family members who will bring up topics that are disturbing, topics that are offensive, say things to you that are upsetting. And you can, if this is not your first rodeo, if you know that, what people are likely to do, you can sort of plan for it. So you can have certain topics that maybe things that are going on in your life that you're not interested in discussing with anybody in your family, or things that people constantly bring up. You can be clear on that for yourself, so that you can be clear when that comes up. You can change the topic, you can redirect it, ask a question to the person who's asking you, ask a question to someone else, just bring something up. Also, you can tell yourself that, excuse me, have a plan for if somebody, sometimes, like I said, there will be people who will say things to you. That's their thing that they always say. You can plan an answer, and you can be polite, and you don't have to be rude or hurtful. You can just figure out a nice way to say something that lets them know that you're not interested in talking about this. And, depending, you can kind of feel it out and let them know, maybe have a conversation. I'd really rather not talk about this when you bring this up. This upsets me. You kind of have to feel that it might not be the right time. You can also try to minimize the amount of time that you spend with difficult people. Either just, don't be around them if you can. Maybe be with them with other people. So that could be kind of like a buffer. Maybe if you're sitting at a meal together, don't sit next to them. If you can, if the table's big enough, sit far away so that you don't have to be near them. Those are all things that you can plan for. And those are all boundaries that you can have. And another thing to try, which might be really difficult, but it can really go a long way, is to try and have a little bit of compassion for them. Often when people say things that are offensive or are difficult, or people just don't interact with us in a way that we like, they either just don't have the skills for that, or they're having their own problems or their own troubles. There could be a whole bunch of reasons that that's happening. And if we can, if you can find it in you to look at them as just human, as flawed, that might help. Think of it as maybe they're not trying to hurt you. Of course, if they are and they're just mean, I'm not trying to sugarcoat things. So this is just a suggestion, and it might be helpful and it might not, and it might be appropriate and it might not. But that's something that you can try. Sometimes people just really don't know any better. And then, maybe at a later time, or, when things quiet down, you can kind of have a talk with them, and, also something that you have to feel out for yourself. Another thing to try is when you're together, you can try and visualize things bouncing off of you. Someone says something, and to you can just find it like, try and have a mental picture of it not being absorbed, of you not absorbing it, of it just like bouncing back. It's also sometimes upsetting to watch family members kind of pick on, or, maybe it's not directed at you. That's kind of what I've been talking about, but I do want to acknowledge that sometimes when family members are difficult, it's just all around difficult, and it can be really frustrating to watch that. So also kind of, if you can sometimes visuals are helpful. So if you could sort of have this picture in your head of sort of like an actual boundary, that might help. And there also might be helpful to think about those people as really just having, their limitations or their challenges, and, that they're just, this is the way they are, which is another thing, which is also challenging, I will say, can be challenging to just accept people for who they are. And that doesn't mean that you have to let them walk all over you, and that doesn't mean that you have to allow them to behave inappropriately, but it's a mindset thing where you just kind of, this is who they are, this is what they do. It's not a reflection on you. It's not a reflection on your behaviors, your actions, your flaws, your condition, your situation, whatever it is. Sometimes people just really are the way they are, and they're difficult. And it can be, it can be hard when when we're sort of like either the recipients or the observers of that kind of behavior. It can sometimes, pop into our minds where, our minds play all kinds of games on us, and we could sort of blame ourselves. What did I do? What did I say? So just remember, it's them, it's not you. And in order to make that happen, you want to practice, the boundaries, which things that you will just kind of deflect it so that you won't react. That's one of the most important things that you want to do, is to not become reactive and not get angry and not say things that you're going to regret. So another way that that might help with that is to plan for timeouts. Like know that, when you get on a plane and they tell you know where the exits are, kind of plan an escape route. Like, maybe you can go outside for a few minutes, or even go to the bathroom for a few minutes, so that you can either say, okay, I need some time and I'm going to get up and I'm going to do this, or you can plan for that and say, after half an hour of sitting here, I'm going to get up and I'm going to leave, which you can either leave if that's possible, or if you're, in the middle, if you can't just actually leave, you can go and take a little break and find a place where you can be quietly by yourself to sort of center yourself. And especially do this if you feel yourself getting, flooded, getting emotional, getting all riled up. You want to avoid that, because you want to be in control. And that's what these things are all about. All of these tips are about you being in control and not letting the situation or other people be in control of you. So also having realistic expectations, you can prepare yourself all you want. And I do think that will go a long way to helping you feel better. It's empowering to know that you can take care of yourself, and also know that you are not going to change other people. Maybe you can have a talk with them, maybe you can prep, depending on what your relationship is like and depending on what those other people are like. You might be able to have a conversation before you're going to be together and say, here's what usually happens. What can we do to make sure this doesn't happen? Or here are some things I'd really rather not talk about. Or here are things that you've said to me that made me feel, bad in any way. And I'd appreciate if you don't bring this up. If you can do that and you feel like they'll be receptive to it, that might be really helpful. But if you can't, just know people are who they are and have realistic expectations of what they can do or how they will be towards you, and know that it's in your hands to, accept it the way that you do and to deal with it the way you do. One thing to try is also to minimize the amount of alcohol you drink. I know that a lot of people, when they're in difficult situations that are challenging, and with people that are challenging and difficult, they will drink to just kind of make it easier and to sort of disappear. But that will just make you more vulnerable to losing control. And I think I don't think that ever works out well. So if you want to be in control and you don't want to risk saying the wrong things or reacting or blowing up or anything, you want to be on top of that. Check in with yourself. You can, that's important because sometimes when people are being difficult, it just sort of rattles you. And the important thing is to practice self-regulation. So checking in with yourself. I know that it can sound, sort of like, weird, but it's important and it really does help. So you can do it in the morning, check in with yourself and say, how are you doing today? What do you need today? How can you be, on the top of your game today in this challenging situation? And spend a few minutes just getting centered like that and listening to yourself. You can do that throughout the day. You can do that, I don't know, whatever the situation is, but before you're going to start that difficult situation. And that also gives you the message that, your feelings matter and your feelings count. And hopefully that will help, to counter kind of like negative feelings if other, people are going to be difficult. Also, just, knowing that this is temporary. I assume that we're talking about temporary because the topic was dealing with difficult family members during the holidays. So if you're going to be with family that you're not usually with, if you live in your living situation is such that you live with difficult family members, that's a whole other thing. But if it is just for the holiday, remind yourself that it's temporary and that, you are going to give yourself the best, set yourself up the best way to handle it gracefully and in a healthy way and to take care of yourself. And that when it is over, you will go back to being, in your normal, regular living conditions, and this will be temporary. And I think that can really help to, to remember that. I think that can really help to manage that. So those are all the tips that I have. And then some people sent in a couple of questions, and I want to address that. So one of them was how to manage this with ADHD. So I do want to say that I am not an expert on ADHD. I don't really know a whole lot about it. So I'm probably not the best person to answer that. But what I did think of is, I think just doing what you normally do for your, to manage your ADHD, just keep that up. Whatever strategies you normally use, whatever medications you take, just don't let that go. Holiday schedules can kind of mess with our regular schedules, but be on top of that because it's extremely important, every day. And especially when you have a change of schedule and a change of circumstance, that can also throw things off a little bit more, and you want to be on top of your game. You can make lists all the things that you want to do, all the things you want to remember that can help you focus, cross things off, just check in with it, do it every day, do it, in the middle of the day, whatever works for you. You want to practice like some calming techniques. This applies to everybody. Practice some calming techniques, like maybe, like I said, if you have an escape plan, or a timeout, you can, in that time, yes, just getting some distance can help, but also just doing some centering or relaxing exercises can help you. Just take a few deep breaths, maybe just, some affirmations. If that's helpful to you, just, remind yourself that you're okay and that you will be okay. As far as the ADHD, also, probably a good idea not to overschedule yourself and keep things simple, because it's just, it's a busy time and there's a lot going on and you don't want to overwhelm yourself. So mindfulness can always help, just, being aware of where you are, what's going on, and being your own person, and just, just not letting other people control you. Another question was how to set boundaries. So I kind of talked about that, about setting boundaries. Well, I liked what I said, what I shared about, that I read about setting boundaries for yourself, which I think translates really well to the self-care. So what are the non-negotiables? Like, what's really important to you? Is it really important for you to get to sleep at a certain time? Is it really important for you to, whatever it is that you need to do for yourself? So those are the self boundaries. And then the boundaries with other people, it's important to be clear on what your needs are. So spend some time on that. Think about the things that are important to you, the things that are important for you to not, the things that push your buttons, the things that you want to avoid, maybe things that people have, interacted with you, difficult people, those interactions. Think about how those have been in the past, and think about what you're willing to tolerate and what you're not willing to tolerate, and be very clear on that, so that you won't get flustered in the moment and not know how to be or react in a bad way and lose control. So be clear, trust yourself that you know yourself, you are the expert of you, and, practice being firm. You might want to practice that with somebody that you trust. Hey, I have this difficult family member and this is what happens, and I really want to practice some boundaries, but it's all new to me and I'm not sure I'll be able to do it in the moment. Will you help me? Maybe some role play with that, just to help you practice being comfortable with it. That can help. Be very clear. So, be clear for your, what you need, be clear with that for yourself. And then also when you're communicating that to the other people, be very clear about that. And think about how to communicate that. Make sure that you, you're using the right language. Don't beat around the bush. You don't have to be mean and you don't have to be insulting, but being clear and precise and using, exact language is really important, because otherwise people, either they won't understand you or they'll find ways to misinterpret what you're saying. And communicate clearly also, just make sure that you make yourself known, and also know that it's okay to do that. You are not being mean and you're not shutting people out by doing that. That is, boundaries are important, really important for all relationships. And I've said this before, but I think that a lot of people get confused and they think that boundaries are there to shut people out. And that's not what boundaries are. Boundaries are there to protect you, not to shut other people out. So if you can remember that, and if people start pushing, trying to get in and don't respect your boundaries, that's because they feel threatened by it. They don't understand it, but it's not that you are, of course you want to be polite and you want to be respectful, but having boundaries is not being disrespectful. You're not doing anything wrong by having boundaries, and it's important that you communicate your boundaries respectfully and appropriately, but just, it's not mean and it's not insulting to anybody else. It is not, Boundaries, again, boundaries are not meant to keep people out. Boundaries are meant to protect you. So, and the only person, the best person who knows what that is for you is you. So spend some time thinking about it. And that is, that's really one of the keys to managing holidays with difficult people. So I would say there are two components to it. One is like taking care of you and making sure that you are in your top form so that you can handle a difficult situation. And the other thing is just communicating to other people what your limits are, what your boundaries are. And again, I think another important thing, like I said, is have realistic expectations. It's not going to be perfect. I mean, it might be, but don't expect that it will be. And hopefully it won't be terrible. And even if it is, you have faith in yourself that you can handle it. And also that it's temporary, hopefully. And I hope that this was helpful. If anybody, those were all the things that I wanted to share. And if anybody wants to type in a question, we have a couple of minutes and I'll do my best to answer it. And okay, I don't see any questions and I have said what I have to say. And I hope that this was helpful and that it goes a long way to helping a lot of people enjoy holidays and other stressful situations, because this topic was about difficult family members and holidays, but it can apply to any time you're going to be with difficult people in general. And so I hope that this helps. This was great. We'll do it again. Bye.